And we're live. Had a little hang there for a second. I got nervous. Whenever I'm the stream master, I have to reset my password usually. But today I didn't. So real streamer now, I guess. How are you doing, Rosa?
I'm good. How are you?
Hanging in there. It's drizzly today in Seattle. One day we will get summer, but not today. How is Houston treating you? Are you guys in the super hot weather yet or not
I
quite?
think we're entering that spring weather, which is lovely. That 70 degrees. I wish it was like that this whole entire time here. But no, I am not looking forward to these hot summers that are about over 100 degrees in Fahrenheit. So
I don't know how
just
you
trying
do
to
it, girl.
enjoy these. Yeah, it's pretty bad. AC, please.
AC. Oh yeah, we don't have that here. We do not have that here. All right. Well, I hope everybody out there is having a good Thursday. Welcome to the Keys to AWS Optimization, the show where we share stories, concepts, and solutions to help you unlock your spend at AWS. My name is Savannah Jensen. I am a senior customer enablement specialist here at AWS. Did not mess up my title. I know my team looks for that. So I'm doing great this morning. And I'm here with Rosa Corley. Rosa, do you want to give us a quick 1-minute intro about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm actually a FinOps commercial architect here at AWS. Just a little background about me. I have about 12 years of IT experience and finance. So that primarily has been on-prem, but it's so great to kind of see how technology has kind of evolved not only into on-prem, but also in the cloud, which led me to become a multi-cloud optimization consultant right after. And then now I'm just here. So helping out different customers with strategies and optimization deep dives.
Awesome. Rosa and I work together pretty often. We both support telco here at AWS, so I'm super excited to have her on the show today. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about how to actually encourage folks to take action on optimization recommendations within your organization. Usually identifying the optimization opportunities is one of the easier pieces of the puzzle, simply because after you identify them, there's often a lot of work to be done to actually actualize them and analyze them and figure out exactly what you can optimize and what's feasible for your business. So one thing that I don't know if it really takes a lot of people by surprise, but it's got a little bit more complexity than initially thought when you just start working on cost optimization, is how unique it can be service to service. Different services have kind of different components and need different optimization activities in order to get them as efficient as possible. Rosa, I know from the commercial architect side, you do a lot more technical deep dives than I do. Can you talk us through a couple of the services that you've optimized recently and kind of give some examples on how to think about them and how they're different from each other?
Yeah, so actually, I just worked with a customer of mine who is wanted to optimize EBS, and I know that's something very common for everyone, but their goal was to reduce their EBS cost. And they took a different approach about, like, instead of just saying, okay, well, this is what our big cost is, they took it an approach where it's like, well, let's identify any EBS volumes that are not tagged. And mind you, they are also trying to get better at their tagging, to have better cost allocation strategies, things like that. And so they identified any EBS volumes that are not tagged. One key thing that this customer did, which I was pretty surprised on it, was that they're like, yeah, we noticed that these EBS volumes show available, and every time we clicked on them, they didn't have any tags associated. And I was like, huh, okay, cool. Like, that's awesome. I'm glad you were able to identify those that way, besides using Tag Editor and other tools that they utilized. But they went ahead and took that approach. And then what they did is that they exported that list and kind of identified what are the bigger EBS volumes that they were seeing in that list. And from there, they went ahead and provided an email to their teams and said, hey, can you please go ahead and target these? Do they need to be tagged? Can they be deleted? And a lot of the owners are like, I don't even know what these EBS volumes are. Or yes, we can delete, which was obviously probably a common story for several of us. But they went ahead and identified thousands of IO1 EBS volumes, which is huge because that's a lot of money that you can actually save there, surprisingly. But yeah, so they went ahead and deleted those IO1 volumes that had no owners, no tagging, and no really purpose there to be in it. So I applaud that customer for kind of taking that initiative of reaching out, communicating with their teams, showing like, hey, I'm not trying to be the bad guy here, but what's going on?
I love that approach because I think it's so important to come with data and bring kind of an actionable list to the different engineering teams if you're asking them to take action, especially with regard to the tagging. I think it's a very common thing for our customers to say that they want to get better at tagging, and using that tagging identification in conjunction with a cost optimization activity really shows the benefit of tagging and kind of gets people into it. Also, it gives them an actionable thing to start with. I think the most common thing customers run into, and I know both of us have seen this in our daily work, is you get a list of cost optimization and you just don't know where to start. It's overwhelming. If you as a FinOps person come to your engineering team and just say, hey, can you optimize EBS? That, like, depending on who you're talking to, that could be incredibly vague. But if you give them a list of volumes and say, hey, can you look at these and either tag them, delete them, or clean them up? That gives people a definite thing to work off of. It's very actionable. And it also kind of, as you're asking them to tag, forces them to go in and look at the volumes anyway. So might as well pair that with cost optimization, and, save a little money while you're there.
Yep.
Right. We've got a question in the chat already. So how long end to end did it take them to find and remove the EBS volumes in this? Like, how long of an effort was this overall?
I think that actually took them about maybe a couple of weeks, maybe 2 to 3 weeks. Yeah. I'm really pleased with this customer because they actually have a dedicated FinOps person who is taking a look at each of these volumes. And not only that, but they also look at everything else. But this person makes it a goal to let's target EBS. Next thing we'll do is EC2. So, it's kind of doing it that phase approach of not trying to overwhelm your teams, but just kind of narrowing it down like what Savannah just mentioned. So yeah, it just really depends on how urgent and how big you're trying to push that out towards your customers or your team.
To your team. Your internal customers, shall we say.
I know.
It's so funny, like, on switching back and forth when we're talking about what customers are doing. Your internal customers, your stakeholder teams. Yeah, I mean, I think another thing too, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but it's so critical to, as FinOps, make sure that you are not just being the bad guy all the time and presenting all of these opportunities in a way that is helpful and actionable for your software development teams, right? And coming to them with data and explaining to them how to start is critical there, instead of just kind of being the big bad governance folks who are telling them to just ambiguously do something that they're not sure how to get their hands around, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, being on the IT side, I definitely felt that a lot. Like, where I was told, Rosa, can you please go ahead and, like, turn off this service or do X, Y, and Z? I was like, but why? Like, I need this application to keep running. Like, I don't have any downtime. Give me reasons.
Yeah. Exactly. Give me a reason. Give them a reason. Help them understand why it matters, and then help kind of tie it back to the pocketbook at the end of the month.
Yep,
as well.
Exactly.
All right. I know you've also done a good bit of work with Graviton recently. Is it possible for you to tell us a little bit more about that? I know Graviton's a pretty hot topic right now. And it's an interesting one for a lot of folks.
Yeah, so I do want to give a little shout out to our colleague, Rem Beaumont. He definitely helped us a lot with creating an awesome tool to identify Graviton for RDS. But with this customer, we actually looked at different areas, like what is their current DB engine, what versions do they have, workloads, and then kind of compared it with their metrics that they're running. because they wanted to move their RDS instances to Graviton. But yes, there are some situations where based off of whatever workloads they're running, you can't convert to Graviton, or maybe there's a code. But we try to target it as a lower effort approach. Like, these are already on the correct database engine. Let's go ahead and convert these over to a Graviton instance, which I think we were able to identify, a couple thousands of dollars to save them when they were able to modernize it to Graviton. So it was really good, but just kind of having those key like visibility of like, what metrics, what performances, what versions they're running can help you identify what like if you can move over to Graviton or not, or if there's a much more lift and shift kind of effort in that end.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, again, I think it just kind of ties back to the complexity of optimization as a general area, right? Very different things to keep in consideration there when compared to optimizing S3, for example, or EBS, like you talked about earlier. So making sure that you're being, I guess, thoughtful about how you're presenting that to your engineers is certainly a big part of it. We've got an episode completely about Graviton and kind of identifying workloads that you can take a peek at on YouTube. There's also a well-architected lab. So like a lot of optimization opportunities and kind of different optimization levers, there are a lot of resources out there for it, but making sure that you're kind of leveraging them, being thoughtful about it, and presenting data that's going to help people take action is, in my opinion, kind of key to success. Pivoting a little bit to how we've seen customers implement optimization programs and really get people excited. Rosa, I think you kind of hinted at it before, but the big one that we wanted to talk about was coming up with some sort of campaign and like a rhythm of business that your customer, or that you can use as a customer, to encourage people and make it actionable. So I think the customer you were mentioning had a phased approach with EBS, EC2, et cetera. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like?
Yeah, so a customer of mine, they had hundreds of thousands of EC2s running. It's a huge customer, and they were like, okay, well, we need to figure out how to right size these, but also take it in that phased approach, because I can't just tell my team just to go and do all these big ask. So they went ahead and started looking at any underutilized EC2s, like trying to identify those low hanging fruit to just kind of slightly make an impact as they were moving forward. And as they either use Trusted Advisor, Compute Optimizer, or any other tooling that they had, and identified those underutilized. From there, they also looked at any performance metrics that they had with those EC2s, trying to see, well, maybe with the right sizing, should we go ahead and go from one instance type to another? And as they kept going, each phase, because we can say it could be a quarterly phase, it can be monthly. It just really depends on how long of a track they want to keep that process going. But the way they went about it is still going into that performance metrics. Then once they've identified, okay, let's go ahead and right size these EC2 instances. And then they went to modernizing as well. Because yes, we can tell them, okay, now that you've right sized and you modernize, let's go ahead and buy a savings plan. And it's like, wait, hold on. Before you do that, let's apply some instance scheduler. Not all your EC2 instances need to be running 24/7 unless you have specific workloads that require that, which is completely understandable. But if you have a few that maybe like non-production, you can definitely put those on an instance scheduler. And then once you kind of have that rhythm of seeing how it works, you can look into buying a savings plan or an RI for those EC2s.
That weekend elasticity.
Yeah, just identifying all of that. Yeah, so they kind of took that approach, and they were able to find a lot of savings in that end.
Awesome. I really like the way that they structured that too, because if you again, there's a lot to do in EC2 depending on what your business looks like. And you've just covered 3 or 4 optimization opportunities there, all stacked on top of each other. So it's kind of like a waterfall, right? At first you identify the low-hanging fruit, then we go a little bit more in depth to right size, then modernization, then elasticity. At that point, the folks that you're working with and the people doing this work have learned a lot because you can provide education along the way. And by the time you get to the point where you're ready to kind of really buckle down and make some more aggressive savings plan commits, you're very confident about the workload that you're starting with. And you've gotten there in a way that isn't overwhelming to anyone because it's just one step at a time.
Exactly.
One of the customers that I worked with a while back did something pretty similar when they kind of structured their campaign, but they wanted to do a quarterly cycle, and they declared that Q1 was going to be the quarter of storage, storage mania.
Nice.
So within January, they focused on EBS, provided a bunch of information and education about what EBS is for, when to use which volumes, did a cleanup activity for GP2 to GP3 to start getting some of those savings. And then the second month in February focused on S3, again, storage focus, provided that education, learned about S3 INT lifecycle rules. And then at the end of the quarter, so end of March, finishing up Q1, they were able to report on all the different savings that they had achieved and really show that value back to the folks who had been doing the work. So again, like chunk it up in a piece that is manageable for you. If it helps you to have a theme, if it helps you to add that to a sprint or add that to an existing rhythm of business, absolutely do that. Iteration is incredible and can be super, super helpful to make those small changes over time to get somewhere bigger.
Yep.
The chat agrees. We actually do have another question in the chat that I want to pull up because I think we kind of obliquely touched on it a little bit. Do you have criteria on how to save on instance costs, optimize memory, CPU, and such? So we actually do have a couple tools. Rosa, it sounds like you're jumping in. Let me find a link to drop in the chat if you want to start chatting
Let me hold on. I mean, I think so. With this one customer, when it came to what criteria would work, I've always been a big believer of looking at like your memory metrics, your CPU, those type of key areas, just because you can either have an EC2 instance that it's like you're really reaching that max. And going back to those server days when I used to be in IT, it was like, all right, if I'm starting to see some sort of throttling that I don't know, we're seeing slow performance, let's try to see if we can adjust properly according to what that application required. So I always wanted to come in and like look at, what are that memory and CPU metrics is it pulling? And so that's the way I look at it. I love the fact that Compute Optimizer, that tool is so neat, because not only can you just identify, okay, if I go to one specific EC2 instance, I can save this much, but this is the kind of memory gain that I get or CPU gain that I get there. I definitely think that Compute Optimizer can compare it amongst 3 different EC2 instances, I believe. But it's pretty neat to have that visibility instead of just saying, okay, well, let me go ahead and try this and kind of play the lotto there and see, like, is it going to work or not? And Compute Optimizer does that for you.
Absolutely. And as we learned a couple weeks ago, we now have a new Compute Optimizer integration with some of our third-party partners to get even more of that memory metric data. So if you missed that episode, be sure to check it out on YouTube. Steph and I talked to Hamreet from the Compute Optimizer development team about the new integration, kind of everything that comes with it. Also, plug for Cost Newsbot. We love Cost Newsbot here at Keys to AWS Optimization. All right. So hopefully that answered your question. Be sure to take a peek at some of the documentation and check it out if you haven't already. But kind of coming back to our regularly scheduled programming, shall we say. We've talked a little bit about campaigns and how people have plugged education and plugged certain services into their optimization strategy. One thing I think we've both mentioned a little bit is measurement. and showing the progress that we've made. So I think everybody who works in cost optimization or AWS costs has gotten a question about KPIs at one point or another. And Rosa, I think you're probably sick of my talk track that KPIs don't have to be scary at this point.
Hey, it's okay. I mean, we get asked that question all the time, and literally it just depends. It depends on the customer, it depends on what your workload looks like. I know on my end, I've had customers like, well, what are the best KPIs you can track? And it's like, well, you can look at elasticity. You know, we just covered that on EC2.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, is your unit cost for EC2, you know, at a really high level, and should we reduce that? Like, how do we do that? And can we track it? Another thing would be like prod versus non-prod. So it just really depends on the customer. I know one thing that I always kind of try to divert the customer to look at is we do have the KPI dashboard in our well-architected lab. And if you don't know where to start, that dashboard actually has a lot. I think it was like a good amount of key KPIs to kind of take a look at, EC2, EBS, graviton adoption. So it's a really neat tool to kind of just have something to start with. And my saying is always have one KPI that you're going to track.
Absolutely. Start easy, start simple, build from there.
Yes.
As you mentioned, we have the KPI dashboard. I've dropped that link of kind of how to get started and play with a demo KPI dashboard in the Cloud Intelligence Lab in the video and in the chat there. We've got a KPI question. How should I think about KPIs? So I would say in relation to the optimization campaigns that we've been talking about, or how to implement optimization, that's kind of an easy inroad right away that you can use to tailor KPI to the work you're doing. So for example, if we're thinking about EBS optimization and just kind of thinking about the topic that you would talk through, Rosa, maybe before you start, you say, okay, I'm going to track GP2 versus GP3, just do a simple percentage little metric at the beginning to see where you are. That customer specifically, it sounded like they got in there and they found a bunch of IO1s. They were looking at tags. Possibly as you get a little bit farther along in that journey, you can pivot that a little bit and say, okay, let's think about IO1 count or IO1 percentage, since that's kind of a big thing that we're targeting. And then if we're focusing on untagged resources, let's do a percentage metric of how many resources within the EBS portfolio are tagged. So start with the behavior trying to encourage, first of all. And then as you go, it's perfectly fine to iterate and add on more things that you're tracking too. Do you have any other thoughts?
I think try to see what is your business goals. You know, what point are you trying to get across? You know, do you have access to that data to actually say, okay, I want to track this? You know, kind of keep those things in mind of like, what is my goal? So if we're really going to take that initiative of like EC2 right sizing, what does that compel? What do I want to see? Do I need to find out like my modernization, or do I want to look at elasticity? I mean, you can kind of tailor it where it works for you. I don't know if that answered your question, but I mean, it really varies. But I would say think of end goal. What's your end goal with that? Yeah.
Start with the end in mind. Work backwards.
Exactly.
Shall we say? Like as we do often here at Amazon.
Yes. Yes, I love that. What gets measured gets managed. 100%.
All right. Yeah. What gets measured is what gets managed. Thank you, MaskJ1. MaskJ11, excuse me. And then this is kind of a wild card, but we'll take it. Since AWS is constantly evolving and improving its services at its employee, does it often feel like a constant learning experience? Yes, 110% yes. I've been here for 5 years, and every day I still get asked a question that I don't know. So,
which I think John Massey also brings it back into that AWS cost news spot. So with everything that AWS is pushing out, if you can't keep track of it, I think that's a really good tool resource to look at.
If you don't want to read the blog,
it's constantly improving.
We love it. All right. Oh, we've got lots of questions today. I love it. Any suggestions on how to incentivize optimization or make it a priority in an org and get people to take action? I've got a couple of these that I've seen before. Rosa, do you have anything that you want to kick it off with?
I'll let you go first and I think I have an example.
Awesome. So you can do this a lot of different ways. It kind of depends on your organization's culture and what you think will motivate people. So I've seen organizations stand up something like a contest that rewards or names the top optimizer of the month or top optimizer of the quarter, or gives the team recognition. If you kind of look at it from the other side, I've also seen organizations post lists of kind of teams with the most optimization opportunity that they update from time to time. One thing that I've also seen people do, if you're really trying to kind of speed run it, shall we say, is do some sort of fin hack with prizes associated with it. So give people a sticker, give people some swag, whatever it is. A fin hack can be like a very interactive program. Maybe you do an education piece the first half of the day and then let people do hands-on work the second half of the day, and who's ever found the most optimizations or taken the most action at the end of it gets a sticker or a prize. Those are all some easy ways to get started.
Yeah, I actually had a customer where I think they have like a quarterly meeting obviously every quarter, but what they would do is they do like a hackathon and just try to find out like, where can we save money? And whichever team found it, like got gift cards or got the shout out, or maybe like a little glass trophy that says, FinOps team of the year, things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I would definitely think of just try to come up with a game solution, figure out something that can help your team be like, okay, well, it's worth it.
This is also always an option. The good old reliable pizza party, or a good old reliable Amazon gift card. When we do them internally, we do little Amazon gift cards as well. But yeah, anything that you can do to kind of add something extra on it. At the end of the day, especially if you're an engineer who's kind of trying to push out new features, optimization sometimes feels like your third job. Like it's something that you have to do at the end of the day, and it's another thing to think about. So anything you can do to gamify it, make it more fun, add some prizes, add some excitement to it, I think will help people get engaged. And if you have any questions, or if you have anything that's really worked for your business, you can go ahead and email us your questions at costoptimization@amazon.com. Or if you have anything that you have really liked to do, please share it.
Yeah, and I would love to see if anyone has done anything like that on their end. So if you guys have that, put it in the chat. I would like to see what others have done.
Drop it in the chat. All right. So we're coming up to the top of the hour here. Rosa, I guess if there's one thing you want folks to take away from this session, just a little speed flash round, what would it be?
I would just say take it as a phased approach. I mean, don't overwhelm your team. I know you don't want to be overwhelmed yourself. Take it one step at a time, and you'll get there. You're always going to be optimizing. You can say, okay, we're done this quarter, but there's always going to be more. So just baby steps, you'll get there.
Baby steps, one step at a time is key.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, as I think we've discussed, and anybody will tell you, AWS is always changing, right? We do this little thing called reInvent every November. We come out with new services, we come up with new opportunities. So many more services are getting serverless options, right? What's the right choice for your business now might be something that you would want to rethink and kind of do some more efficiency practices on a year from now. So making sure that it's fluid, making sure that it's as fun as it can be and as low stress as it can be for the folks who are really hands-on keyboard doing this stuff is critical. And when it comes to KPIs, start simple. Don't overthink it. That's my tip.
Love it.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Rosa. It's been lovely talking to you.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Awesome. Take care, everybody. Hope you have a great rest of your Thursday as we round out the week. Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you.